Nothing prepared me for this book, and that includes those of you who read it and didn't warn me. Thanks! Hi, my name's Rachel, and today we are talking about All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby, which I was asked to read by my Therapy Bills patron, Chris. This is a horror thriller book about a black sheriff in a small town in Virginia, and nobody warned me that this was going to do religious trauma, but there is a serial unaliver doing religious stuff in this book. I tandem read this on ebook and audiobook. I actually bought the audiobook, and I really feel like I am very stingy about my audiobook purchases recently, and this one was fully worth the money I spent. Wasting money is something I am trying to be cautious about and make more conscious decisions about, and something that's helping me do that today is today's sponsor, Rocket Money. Rocket Money is the all-in-one personal finance app that helps you lower your bills, cancel unwanted subscriptions, and manage your money better. And I am using Rocket Money to cancel unwanted subscriptions. Actually, when they reached out to me, that was my first thought. I was like, please, I need help. I can't do it alone. I had been paying for something for a while that I wanted to cancel, but then when I signed up, I noticed that they listed all of this stuff that I was paying for, and some of it I had forgotten about, which is really embarrassing. I did not know that I still had an Instacart subscription, but now I have a little extra money and can buy my kid his new Dogman books, which he's been yelling at me about, as well as some great new audiobooks. Rocket Money safely and securely identifies unwanted charges, and it cancels subscriptions for you. You can even cancel from the app, which is great for those of us with phone call anxiety, certainly. So I was able to cancel with just a few taps, and I didn't need to worry about customer service. It lays out what you're subscribed to, how much you're paying for it, and how often. So are you paying weekly? Are you paying monthly? Another way that Rocket Money is helping me is by setting and sticking to a budget, which is super helpful if you're like me, trying to save to go do fun things and don't want to sit there and create an Excel spreadsheet for hours. Rocket Money has helped save its customers up to $740 a year with over 500 million in canceled subscriptions. They certainly did help me by canceling those subscriptions that I did not know I had. Save more, spend less by joining the 5 million members using Rocket Money today. You can go to rocketmoney.com/readswithrachel or click that link down below to get started for free by downloading the app. And you can unlock even more features with premium. So that's rocketmoney.com/readswithrachel to get started for free. And thank you so much to Rocket Money for sponsoring today's video and helping me cancel the Instacart subscription that I forgot about. Okay, All the Sinners Bleed. If you can't tell, again, this is like a religious themed book a little bit with the so I just want to forewarn you several times about that. Let me give you the synopsis, then a spoiler-free overview, and then a spoiler-filled deep dive. Titus Crown is the first black sheriff in the history of Sharon County, Virginia. In recent decades, Sharon has only had 2 murders. After years of working as an FBI agent, Titus knows better than anyone that while his hometown might seem like a land of moonshine, cornbread, and honeysuckle, secrets always fester under the surface. Then a year to the day after Titus's election, a school teacher is killed by a former student, and the student is fatally shot by Titus's deputies. Those festering secrets are now out in the open and ready to tear the town apart. As Titus investigates the shootings, he unearths terrible crimes and a serial killer who has been hiding in plain sight, haunting the dirt lanes and woodland clearings of Sharon. With the killer's possible connections to a local church and the town's harrowing history weighing on him, Titus projects confidence about closing the case while concealing a painful secret from his own past. At the same time, he also has to contend with a far-right group that wants to hold a parade in celebration of the town's Confederate history. Powerful and unforgettable, All the Sinners Bleed confirms S.A. Cosby as one of the most muscular, distinctive, and grab you by both ears voices in American crime fiction. I totally agree, although I didn't know that we used muscular outside of the actual muscle purpose. But I totally agree that this is one of the most distinct and grab you by the ears books that I have ever read. Again, no one warned me that this was heavy on the religious stuff. So specifically with the serial killer. So if you have religious trauma that is related in part to what the serial killer is doing, there's also a racial aspect there, but there's a lot of religious imagery surrounding the serial killing. So if that is triggering for you, I would specifically avoid. That all being said, I gave this book a whopping 5 stars. This is an incredible piece of work. The audiobook narrator really brought this whole story and the characters distinctly to life, but it's not like he was working with nothing here. S.A. Cosby did a tremendous job immersing immersing you in this story. At least he did for me. These were real people to me. This was transportive in a way that I don't think I've experienced before in like a horror thriller without supernatural elements. Our main character, Titus, is such a well done, like I really felt like he was a real person. Our main character, Titus, is a sheriff who has been the sheriff for a year. He used to work for the FBI, and you're kind of questioning, why would he leave such a big job to become the sheriff of this, you know, small town? Especially a small town that holds so much pain for him. He lost his mom. Sure, his dad lives there and his brother lives there, but he's kind of disconnected from his brother. And his dad, he's not mad, but he's a little frustrated that his dad is still somewhat religious after he feels like religion abandoned his mom and, you know, God didn't save her from this very painful death. So Titus lost his faith in Christianity while his dad sort of, you know, became more Christian. And there's so much care taken to weave those interpersonal elements into the larger story with the events of these serial killings that Titus has to investigate as the sheriff. Sorry, Carlos took our oldest out for ramen and manga shopping, and he's very excited. And you realize that Titus is sort of like self-inflicted pain, penance for a mistake that he made in the past, and you're wondering what that is because you're seeing it affect how he does his job and how he, you know, communicates with other people, but you don't know what it is until the end. And I thought that again was just another layer that made the story richer. It really made him feel very three-dimensional. It affects how he approaches his relationships and his job. And then the town itself is such a rich setting in that, again, it was like very transportive of a book. So you feel like you are there. Although it's not hard to feel like you're there in the aspect of like, you know, fucking Confederate apologists always wanting like their fucking statues up and shit. I live in a town with the second largest, I believe, Confederate flag in the United States that is flown next to a highway, very prominent highway called I-4, which is the one you take to get from Tampa to Disney. And the apologists for the Confederate shit make me so mad. So I was seething along with Titus reading this book. And when he talks about how he's like, you know, in high school, because this is the town he grew up in, he's like, I just wanted to take that son of a bitch down, take that fucking statue down, hook it up to my truck and drag it down the road and like watch the sparks fly. And I'm like, do it! Me too. Like I would, if I could do a controlled burn of just that Confederate flag here in my city, I would do that. So you feel like you're there. All that to say, experiencing this small town setting where it feels like this town is like ready to boil over. Titus feels like it's solely on him to hold that back from happening. And again, going back to like him paying penance for his past mistakes. The book's discussions though on grief and religious belief and how religious belief can fail you, like God can fail you and you feel unworthy as a result. All of this is so well done. And then on top of that, it's incredibly fast paced and the stakes are so high. So you end up feeling like very ravenous to finish this. And I was surprised by the page count. It was longer than I thought it was, but there is nothing superfluous here. It is perfectly paced. This is going on my favorites of the year list. If you like horror thrillers and can handle death of children, serial killings, immense racism, gun violence, and again, that religious imagery being tied to like violence, particularly against children, particularly against Black and brown children. If you can, again, tread carefully, but if you can read it, I highly recommend it, especially on audio. S.A. Cosby is somebody who I just have deep respect for. If you do not follow him on Twitter, I highly recommend you do. What an absolutely incredible force to be reckoned with in the horror genre. Just incredible work. Also, I really appreciate S.A. Cosby in calling out misogyny in the horror community, which a lot of men are reticent to do as of recently. And S.A. Cosby, along with Gabino Iglesias, who also wrote a like horror thriller called The Devil Takes You Home, both of them just the deepest amount of respect for. Just absolutely incredible people that I'm so grateful for. This book opened up and immediately I knew that I was gonna have a good time. I did read this on audio. I read this exclusively on audio, but I did write down the quotes that I wanted to share with you. In the beginning of the book, it says Sharon County, Virginia was founded in bloodshed and darkness, literally and figuratively. In 1805, a group of white landowners, chafing at the limits of their own manifest destiny, set fire to the last remaining indigenous village on the teardrop-shaped peninsula that would become Sharon County. Damn! Chafing at the limits of their own manifest destiny. That's how he started the book. Immaculate. So our main character is Titus. He is the county's first black sheriff. He has been the sheriff for about a year now. He lives with his father Albert, and his mom died about 20 years ago. He has a girlfriend who is very into him, but he doesn't seem to be giving much attention to, and he deals with a lot of flat out racists in his community. In Virginia, I'm shocked. A guy actually got hit by a logging truck, and that's what led him to winning an election for sheriff. Talking about the previous sheriff who was not a good guy, it says at one point that the old sheriff got into a fight with a goat, and the goat, as was the tendency of victors, did not comment on the situation. So not only is this well written, but it's also funny in a very dry, flat way, which I super enjoy. His dad, who is like part of, like, I think he was a deacon or something at the church. He's very involved in the church community, as was Titus's mom. Titus is not involved in church at all now, but this is a very like religious heavy county. So his dad is like a really nice guy. He like gives him a card and says your mom would be so proud of you for being sheriff. And right like up front towards the beginning it says, would his mom be proud if she knew what happened at the DeCrane compound in northern Indiana? Titus didn't think so. And I'm like, what the fuck happened at the compound? What do you mean? What happened? So we get introduced to like who Titus works with at the sheriff's department that he, you know, runs. And these people all just felt like super real to me. So like one of the people who works at the sheriff's office is Cam, and he has a souped up wheelchair that he created by watching wheelchair videos on YouTube, and it gets up to 20 miles per hour now. Cam calls Titus and says that there is an active shooter at the high school, and he's like, Titus, my own nephew's there. This is a small town, not a super small town, well, it's county, but like there are like big names in the county. Tampa's not like this, but Sharon County is. So I felt very transported there. It sort of felt like being back in Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. It sort of felt like being back there. So the son of a man he knows has gone to the school and shot a beloved teacher, Mr. Pearson. And the former student who shot Mr. Pearson comes out and says Mr. Pearson called himself the Angel of Death, and that another guy was also like an Angel of Death, but he wore a mask, but Mr. Pearson liked them to see his face. And the kid says, check Mr. Pearson's phone. And then he starts towards the police, and the officers shoot him dead, which, you know, was sort of an execution. They could have arrested him, but okay. He then has to tell this kid's parents, and he's known this kid's parents since elementary school. So it was pretty clear to me like what was going on with Mr. Pearson. I felt like they were a little bit not super astute, because immediately if the person who just shot Mr. Pearson is saying check his phone, I'm thinking child pornography, which is true. So at this point I probably need to issue trigger warnings. So trigger warning for racism, obviously, serial killing, religious stuff, lots of religious stuff, including like snake preachers, snakes, murder, tons of murder using religious imagery, murder of children, kidnapping of a child. The descriptions of the murdered bodies of children I felt like were not overly graphic. I could handle it. There is discussion of videos being found of people murdering children, and I didn't think that they were overly graphic. It just sort of flatly states what's going on, but it's not talking about like gore and viscera. I felt like it was very considerate in the way that it delivered that information, but a lot of other people will not be able to handle it regardless. It is there. Gun violence and pedophilia. Also a bombing and violence via knife. Violence via knife. Why didn't I just say stabbing? So what happened is that he does get access to Mr. Pearson's phone eventually after talking to the parents of the kid who shot Mr. Pearson. He's trying to figure out, you know, why would he do this? He does check the phone, and he finds an app on it that has a ton of videos of Mr. Pearson and another man who is in a mask sexually harming and murdering children, mostly black and brown children. Now, I assume that when Luttrell, the kid who shot Mr. Pearson, said check his phone, like all the stuff that he said, it was very obvious to me like where this was going. I don't know, maybe in real life there's other context going on. Maybe I'm just thinking of this like in a story rather than like real life context, but I feel like enough information was given to where that was like the logical choice, and I felt like we did a little bit too much. Why would he do this? It was pretty obvious to me, like why would he go out of his way to just go into the school and shoot this one guy who he said Mr. Pearson liked them to see his face, go check his phone. You know what I mean? But it's fine. This is going to be full of spoilers. If you don't want to know spoilers, just know that I gave this a 5-star rating. It is a brutal book. It is a well written book. It is a painful book. If you like horror thrillers but can handle stories with serial killers who are targeting children, particularly black and brown children, without having a panic attack, maybe try this out. But again, this is a very triggering book in that capacity for those who can't handle it, so avoid if you cannot read that kind of stuff without having a panic attack. But you don't want any spoilers, just know I think that this is an incredible book. I think that you should try it if you like horror thrillers. So Titus is dealing with a lot of like having to tell people that he's known since he was a kid devastating stuff, having to have these conversations, but also having to like maintain this like very strict demeanor of I am the sheriff and I have to go above and beyond because I am a black man and they're going to look at me harder than they would a white sheriff. One of his officers who shot Latrell, the kid who shot the teacher, he puts on administrative leave because he's like, you were trigger happy. I have to investigate to make sure that everything is on the up and up. And the guy's like, I did my job. He's like, you were involved in a shooting and I have to put you on administrative leave. That's my job. And they all think this is bullshit. And you start to pick up on like, okay, whatever happened at the Crane compound is clearly affecting like Titus wanting to make sure that he does everything on the up and up even more so. And you start to ask yourself like, why would a man who was in the FBI suddenly want to be a small town sheriff? It has these like really potent lines talking about like small towns. One of them says, small towns will always give up their secrets and the price for those revelations will always be paid in blood. Jesus. He realizes that there's a painting in Mr. Pearson, the nasty teacher's house, with a tree, and he realizes, I know that tree. I bet you that that's where the bodies are buried. And sure enough, they're digging, everybody's about to leave, and he's like, no, I know these bodies are here. And eventually they do find a lot of bodies of buried, murdered children, particularly black and brown children. They finally identify one of these kids and he goes and talks to the mom, and these were typically runaway children who had been picked up. And he goes and talks to one of the moms and she says, faith is a fragile thing, but you get broke, get sick, or you lose your only child. I used to pray every night for my son to come back, then I just stopped. And this is mirrored in him losing his faith. At one time, he and his dad are talking about his lost faith, and his mom was very involved in the church, and his dad still is. And his dad's really compassionate about this, but he's like, son, you know, God is love. And he's like, Dad, I just feel like if God was powerful and loving and hadn't abandoned us, he wouldn't have allowed mom to get sick and die the way that she did. And he says, Pop, faith broke my fucking heart. And I was like, no, not this grown man making me cry. There's a lot of players in this book, and I felt like all of them were really well done. So there's like a former friend of Latrell's, Darnell, who is sort of doing jobs for this guy who runs a bar, who is clearly running a lot of drugs in the county, and whenever they try to stop him running drugs, he's been tipped off, and eventually they've come to find out that he was tipped off by somebody who works at the police department. So Titus has to let this guy go. He's also regularly getting calls from a guy named Scott Cunningham who works on the county like board of supervisors, and Scott Cunningham like expects like special favors from him when Titus is like, I'm just here to do my job, I don't work for you, I don't work for the board of supervisors. And there's also like this entire like right-wing white supremacist group who's like, we want our Confederate soldier statues, and Titus is like, oh man, I fucking hate that statue, I've been wanting to take that statue down since I was a kid. And in the end he does. I love it. And at the fall festival, where there ends up being this protest where these white supremacists end up causing, you know, a fight, people die, it says, it occurred to him that no place was more confused by its past or more terrified by the future than the South. He also has a brother named Marquise, and Marquise doesn't come around a lot. They sort of don't really talk very much. And Marquise eventually asks him, hey, why did you come back? You were working for the FBI. What happened? And Titus finally reveals that he was involved in taking down a cult leader named Red DeCrane in Indiana. Wanted to take this guy down, and this guy had ended up having his family kill themselves. They had been like strapped, they had like grenades on them. Well, then when all the bombs and stuff went off, a bunch of Titus's fellow FBI agents were killed. Titus was still alive, and so was Red DeCrane, the cult leader, and he had asked for a doctor, and Titus, instead of getting him a doctor, shot him to point blank. He executed him, and he asked himself, what had the rules ever really gotten me? So I shot him. And the bureau asked him to resign. I got away with killing a man because I was the law, so as penance penance, I try to do better. So now he's sort of like punishing himself for what he's done by trying to go above and beyond what he's supposed to do and like follow the letter of the law to the T and be perfect all the time. But not only is he punishing himself as penance, he also feels like he cannot fail due to his pride. Scott Cunningham on the board of county directors, because this is a small town, also has a brother named Caleb who runs Cunningham Flag Factory. And they realized that there was somebody working for Cunningham Flag Factory who is involved in this. Because this whole time, Mr. Pearson's dead, but Mr. Pearson's fellow murderer and the pedophile who was also killing kids is still at large. And he keeps calling and saying like all this like weird religious shit to Titus from a blocked phone number. And Titus had heard from Scott Cunningham's mom that she had had another kid and she had had this half black child that she was then forced to give away. And he went to go live with a snake preacher's family who lives in a different part of the county. And this snake preacher and his family were extremely racist. So we have this half black child living with this family, and then he just sort of fell off the map. So he doesn't know what his name is, but Titus is like, this is clearly the killer. He has his birth name, or at least the name that the snake preacher's family called him, but he doesn't know what this kid goes by now. He doesn't know what he looks like. He's a grown man now. He doesn't have hardly any information on him. Now, there was a guy at the protest who was running down, he was a white supremacist, running down people in his car. And his name was Denver Carlisle. And he recognizes something in Denver's car that was also swallowed by one of the children who was murdered by Mr. Pearson and the other guy duo. We're going to call him Azrael because he likes to be called the Angel of Death. He realizes that there's a connection between Denver Carlisle and Azrael. Denver often worked at the truck company in the summer, the flag company in the summer, like driving the trucks, the one owned by the Cunninghams, as in the same Cunninghams who the mom had that child who she was forced to give away. And one of the guys who worked with Denver Carlisle was a guy named Royce Lazar, and if you switch around the name Lazar, the last name, it's Azrael, as in the Angel of Death. And this guy is also a school bus driver, which makes sense because Luttrell, the guy who shot Mr. Pearson, had gotten a text message from an unknown number saying, "I see your brother," which was a threat. So Luttrell was worried about his brother being next, and unfortunately Luttrell was involved in the killing of these kids, though he never sexually assaulted them, but he was being exploited by these men. Azrael, the Angel of Death, aka Royce Lazar, aka Gabriel, and Mr. Pearson, his teacher. And the thing about Mr. Pearson is like everybody in the community loved him, but it was the black boys in high school who were being like molested by him who couldn't come forward, who couldn't say anything. Titus, now having Royce's name, goes to Royce's house. He calls in a bolo and he uses, the police radio, and the same guy who had been tipping off the drug dealer in town, the former cop, shows up and was like, "I heard you on the police scanner, I want to help you out." Royce shows up to the house and kills Tom, the policeman. Titus is wounded. Titus shoots at Royce. Royce runs off. Titus finally finds Royce's bunker on the property, and inside is Royce with Levon, who was Luttrell's brother, and they have this like standoff where Royce, aka Gabriel, aka Azrael, explains like, I was abandoned essentially. And it says that hell is not lakes of fire. Hell is being ignored by God. Damn. Levon had been carrying a knife in his pocket anyway. He stabs into Royce's arm. Titus wakes up in the hospital surrounded by his family, his father and his brother, who he's been like rebuilding a connection with, which was really lovely. I don't know why I'm crying. One of his other deputies, Carla, will be running for sheriff, and Titus is going to leave town. His girlfriend and him broke up because he was so into his work and making himself pay penance for what he had done and obsessed with this case that she was like, "I don't think you love me. I think that I think you're play acting and I love you and I have to leave." She leaves town. He also leaves town and he's going to go teach criminology. And before he leaves town, he uses his Jeep to pull down the Confederate statue in town, which he's been wanting to do since he was in high school. This was a really painful book, a really well written book. This felt so much shorter than it is. It was like a solid, like I think 9-hour her audiobook and it flew by. I was constantly on the edge of my seat. I cried a few times. I think the discussion of like losing your faith because you feel so abandoned by God coming up in character after character because of different experiences they had, like Titus feeling like God abandoned his mom, the mother who felt like God abandoned her because her, son never came home, and even our villain feeling abandoned because he was this mixed child growing up in this racist environment, this house of just absolute racists who treated him like absolute shit, and feeling abandoned by God and wanting to like take that out on other people, that, hatred that he had inside of him, and that being wound up in that religious environment that he was raised in. I think that like discussion of like feeling abandoned by God was so well done and just brought up so seamlessly throughout so many characters. And the idea of like personally punishing yourself and wanting to pay penance for something you have done, but also just like the deep love of family, the lasting love that your family has for you even when you are gone, like Titus's love for his mom and Latrell's family's love for him. I thought that this was a beautifully done book, just absolutely incredibly done. This is one of my favorite books that I've read this year. This is one of my favorite crime horror thrillers that I have read ever. I highly, highly recommend this. I can't thank Chris enough for recommending this one. I would read anything else by S.A. Cosby, and I'll definitely be reading another book by him. Actually, I already downloaded the audiobook on Libro FM. Shout out Libro FM. I have nothing but good things to say. Just absolutely evoking all of the emotions that I was not expecting it, and just pain. There's the review. Pain. Let me know if you have read this. Let me know what your thoughts were. Let me know if you've read any other S.A. Cosby books. If you made it to the end of this video, leave a, I don't know, what's the cover got on it? Orange, right? An orange sun. So leave an orange heart down below if you made it to the end of the video. If you want to, you don't have to. But definitely let me know if you've read any S.A. Cosby books and what your favorite one is, because I would love to hear more. I'm very excited about S.A. Cosby's books. Also, S.A. Cosby just won some awards, I believe, at the, I think, Stoker conference. What, StokerCon was it? It's deserved. Immaculate writing. Incredible. What a journey. And again, the audiobook, if you can, consume it via audio, because the audiobook narrator did such a great job bringing all of this to life. I was genuinely scared at one point. I almost peed myself. So he did a really good job. Highly recommend. Please read this. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye. Before I go, I have to say thank you for being a friend to my Therapy Bills patrons, and those are Alexander, Ashley H, Astrid P, Brittany Bobitney, Cami, Choco's Trash for Japanese Mysteries and Thrillers, Chris the Horror Therapist, DJ Rugbuzz, Ellie, Emerald Dodge, Emperor's New Blues, oh boy, my mouth, Aaron with 2 E's, Eric D, GalaxyBot, Jess, John E, Julie D, Kaleno K, Casey McKenzie, Kate W, Kiari, Quinn, Lady Kittybug, Lady Chips, Lemon Jelly, Lex, Lily B, Max B, Mommy Zami, Alice, Panoramic Demon, that's such a good name, Peggy Lou, who trolls Rachel with her Patreon name. Thank you, Peggy. Rain, Reese, SJ, Sadwich Bree, Samar, Scarlet, Shiny, SMK, Spoopy, Steph B, 2 Orbit, Urchin Audrey, White Raven 13, Zorvictia, and Chai Guy. Thank you all for being here, and thank you so much for being a friend. And last but not least, I have to say thank you for being a friend to my Potato Starch Marxist patrons, and those are Alejandra, Alicia, Treasure of the Carlos Book Rec Fan Club. Carlos just heard me say that. Althea, Amanda D, Amanda, Andy, Angelica, Artie the Ninth, Ava, Ballads and Bookends, Beck, Blake, Lemon Pants, Blythe Lavender, Bookish Brain Rot, Bookish by Jenna, Bree, Caitlin, Cardinal Ginger, Carlin, Casper, Kate, Catherine, Kathy, CJ, Clover's Mom, Cole, Colleen, Corwin, Cosmic, Darius, Danielle, Darren, Desiree, Dilf Enthusiast, Dorian, Dorothea, E.T. Cosgrove, Ebby, Emily A, Emily L, Emma, Other Emma, Aaron, Ezra, Fiona, Gadarn, I'm begging you to email me and tell me how to say that. Garrett, Goddess of Rot, ooh, that's a good one. Hannah C, Harpy Kuro, Haley G, Ilianaka, JM Tennant, Jay is on Olympus, Jelly V, Jen Michelle, Genderqueer, Jenny G, Jessa Sue, Jill, Jojo Bookish, Kat, Catherine, Katie L, Haley, Kayala, Kendra, KMTV, Laughing Cat Dog, Laura Garcia, Lauren G, Lazarus Ray, Library of Scars, Lindsay M, Lisa B, Lisa L, LP, Lou Siri, Lustful Octopus, Martin, Madison, Man-Eating Plant, Marcella, Marquita, Megan, Malara, Mentally Unwell, May, Mockingbird Nation, Molly, James, Natalie, Never, Nicole R, Nicole G, Nimeska, Nyam Binary, Paige P, Penny Chilling, Foxglove, Rachel B, Reader Rising, Reba, Rebecca R, Ronnie, Rosie, Rowan, Socoria, Sadie, Sakia Lume, Samantha O, Sammy C, Sarah H, Sarah the Bear, Sarah Z, Shamed, Shannon, Sean, Super Evil Sam, Tay, Talia, Tiana, Trashcan Teddy, Triple M, Tito Phoenix, and Writer A. Thank you all so much for being here and for being a friend.